It says a lot when a movie has me rooting for Owen Hunt over Derek Shepherd. And honestly, when we got to the part at the wedding chapel and Owen's mother insisted that he deck Derek in the face for the sheer audacity of his ass showing up to wreck the wedding, I cheered so hard when it happened. But then a part of me wondered if this is punishment for the ending of Sweet Home Alabama because it cannot be a coincidence, can it? That the same man who lost his bride at the altar to her childhood best friend in one movie ends up flipping the switch and becoming the childhood or at least teenage slash young adult best friend who steals the bride at the wedding altar just before she was about to marry another man. It's too convenient to be a coincidence, right? Right? Someone patch me onto Patrick Dempsey's agent. I have got questions. So here's the thing. I finished watching this movie weeks ago, but I kept having trouble putting my thoughts together. That wasn't me just screaming into the void. Of course, for me, it just confirmed that the level of rage I felt at the audacity of Tom's wilding ass character meant that it was the perfect fit for a Romcom Gander Tuesday video. Now, if you are new to my channel and curious about what on earth Romcom Gander Tuesday is, it's a weekly video series I have on my channel that often drops on Tuesdays. Ignore the fact that you're seeing this on a Saturday and just roll with it. Whereby I pick a rom-com from the late 80s to the mid 2010s. Often it's a rewatch. On rare occasions, it can be a first time watch. Either way, I watch the film and analyze it to see how well it holds up years later, especially viewing them through my now adult and slightly more cynical lens. Kindly note that for this series, I split these videos into three parts: the intro, which is what you're watching right now, the synopsis of the movie, and finally, my thoughts. As such, I will have timestamps put in so you can navigate and skip as you so choose. Now, before I move on to the synopsis part of the video, I would like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Kat, Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses to mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, Maid of Honor kicks off on Halloween night of 1998. It's Tom Bailey, played by Patrick Dempsey's senior year, and he's dressed as Bill Clinton wanting to get down with Monica, which I know, gross. Anyway, Tom is making his way through campus until he gets to Monica's dorm, and as they had agreed, he enters her room for their prearranged tryst. Seeing who he assumes is Monica in bed, he slides in beside her, and the person wakes up screaming and sprays her perfume in his eyes. When the lights come on, it's revealed that the person in the bed is not Monica, but her roommate Anna, who is a geek. Tom cannot help himself and flirts with her as is his default. Anna responds by insulting him, particularly his nose, which she claims is too big for his face. Tom is delighted since she's the first person he's meeting who doesn't put up with his bullshit. Of course, when they do get back to Tom's dorm, it's to find a drunk Monica waiting for him, although he does not stay and instead walks away. We fast forward to 10 years later, and Tom is now very rich via the coffee collar, i.e., the coffee sleeve that he invented and for which he gets a dime for every sale, a small sum that's become quite a lot in the past decade. He's wealthy, he's attractive, he's flirtatious, and we get to see in the opening sequence that he keeps a steady rotation of women and uses his dating rules to keep them at a distance. The only woman who he doesn't keep at a distance is Anna, who he's been best friends with ever since the night they first met at Cornell. Anna now works as an artist slash curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And whilst Tom has his ever revolving door of women that he hooks up with, Anna is single and is focused on her job. They have a friendship built on open conversations, fond insults, and a steady outings together where they get to explore the city and share food together. There's also the bit where Tom consistently asks Anna to be his date to his father's many weddings. Turns out that his father is a millionaire with a capital M who constantly marries women way, way, way younger than he is, who are clearly only interested in his money. And at the moment, he's about to wed his sixth wife, and Tom begs and convinces Anna to be his date to the wedding. We see at the event that Anna clearly has feelings for Tom, who only sees her as his best friend. After the wedding, however, she informs Tom that she has to go for a week long trip to Scotland for work and so will not be readily available. The long distance means that Tom starts to realize just how much of his life revolves around Anna and he finds himself missing her. After his friends point out that he cannot keep stringing Anna along forever because she's getting older and would ultimately decide to be with someone else, Tom finally gets to jolt and realizes that he has feelings for her and decides to tell Anna when she returns. The problem, however, is that Anna returns with Colin McMurray, played by Kevin McKidd. I know it's a Grey Anatomy reunion in this bitch. Anyway, Anna returns with Colin and is excited to tell Tom that she's getting married in a fortnight and that she wants Tom, who is her best friend, to be her maid of honor. Tom, who is reeling at this sudden change of unexpected events, finally agrees, with his main goal being to use the time whilst he's serving as Anna's maid of honor to convince her that he is the better choice for her instead of Colin and hopefully be able to get her to put a stop to her wedding plans. The problem, however, though, is that one of Anna's bridesmaids is her cousin Melissa, who Tom had once hooked up with and who had gotten her heart broken because of Tom's rules, which are set up to ensure that he never gets serious with any woman. Melissa, who is still smarting at Tom's once rejection of her, sabotages the bridal shower that Tom had set up for Anna by having him inadvertently invite a sex toy saleswoman instead of a tarot reader as he had assumed. Anna is pissed about this, thinking that this just confirms that Tom wasn't taking his duties as her maid of honor seriously and was treating everything like a joke. This has Tom's basketball buddy friend share a How to Be a Perfect Maid of Honor 101 course that his wife had used back when she was a maid of honor. And thanks to the lessons from the course, Tom is able to course correct and give Anna a winning performance that shows her how committed he is into making her wedding preparations perfect. Whilst Tom is riding the high of having done a good job, Anna hits him with the news that she's relocating to Scotland after the wedding. His friends urge him not to give up, and Tom continues his maid of honor duties by traveling to Scotland with Anna as they prepare for the wedding. Upon arriving, Tom and the rest of the bridesmaids are driven up to a castle where they are introduced to Colin's family. The next day, they have a variant of the Highland Games, which is meant to be a traditional event where the groom is meant to prove with his physicality that is deserving of his bride. Tom joins in the festivities, hoping that this would be his chance to prove that he is the one worthy of Anna. But unfortunately, when the final round comes around and Colin is able to throw a whole ass tree trunk looking log whilst Tom wearing a skimpy ass kilt, courtesy of Melissa's scheming, throws his own log into a car, Colin is shown as the clear winner. The rehearsal dinner later that night shows Colin's mother proudly informing Anna that every single piece of meat that they are eating that night were from animals personally hunted by Colin. A piece of information that horrifies and haunts Hannah. Tom, though, is delighted and goes looking for Anna afterwards, where she shares her frustrations with him about her vows that she's still not quite managed to finish writing. Tom, under the guise of helping her write her vows, tries telling Anna his feelings, but she does not realize the truth of what he's actually saying. And then the other bridesmaids show up to drag her to her bachelorette party, where, according to Scottish tradition, she's to give a quick kiss to every man in the pub in exchange for a coin. Things go according to plan until it comes to Tom's turn, where he proceeds to passionately kiss her when everyone isn't looking, and Anna in turn kisses him back. Of course, her mother does catch sight of them, but she does not say anything. Later that night, Anna goes to Tom's room so that they can talk about the kiss, but sees a drunken Melissa with Tom, who is trying to get Tom to have sex with her. Tom resists, and when he notices Anna at the door, he pushes Melissa off of him and goes running after her. Anna, however, refuses to talk to Tom and informs him that regardless of what had happened that night, she still intends on marrying Colin the next day. Tom, who is hurt and cannot watch Anna marry someone else, gives up his role as the maid of honor and takes a car to start heading back home. However, he eventually realizes that he absolutely must at least try his best at stopping the wedding and has the driver take him back. By the time he arrives, he learns that the entire wedding party have already left for the ceremony, and the only ferry boat that could have taken him across is not available any longer. Tom decides to take a horse and gallops his way to the wedding ceremony, but the horse's sudden stop outside the chapel doors sends him flying through said doors as he crashes his way in, effectively interrupting the wedding. With him having gotten Anna's attention, if you will, he declares his love to her, and Anna responds by telling him that she loves him right back and kisses him right there in the chapel. I swear, the audacity of these two, Your Honor. Anyway, after the passionate kiss, Anna realizes that they are still at the chapel with her almost husband watching and apologizes to Colin. Colin accepts but also follows through on his mother's words and punches Tom in the face for the disrespect. Tom and Anna fly back to New York and they get married on a rooftop under the stars, surrounded by their family and friends, with Melissa, who finally gets to be Anna's maid of honor as she's always wanted. The end. Sometimes you get to the end of a movie, and the first thing you do is scour the internet to see if anyone else was as upset in exactly the way you were at the events as they played out. Sometimes you eat gold in that you stumble on just a snarky tweet that perfectly captures your feelings about said movie. And then sometimes, like me, you instead stumble on a post that has you immediately shaking your head at just how wrong the OP was with regards what they had shared some years back. Because you see, there are some people on this very planet with whom we share air, who exist in the same place, eat somewhat similar foods, who actually believe that maid of honor is merely a gender bent version of my best friend's wedding. And this particular take is one that I object to vehemently, as a matter of fact. And no, my objections to this film isn't simply because I think it reads more as an assuaging of Derek Shepherd's wounded pride at not getting the girl in Sweet Home Alabama, which I will come back to in a bit. But it's more because a lot of people who make the comparison to My Best Friend's Wedding miss a very important aspect of that particular film: the promise. Because you see, Julia Roberts Jules spent the years leading up to where we pick up in the plot of the film itself, the start of it, having it at the back of her subconscious mind that the promise Michael, her best friend, had made to her, without her asking his ass to, mind you, he did that all on his own, was one that would soon be realized, i.e., if they are both unmarried at 28, they would just bite the bullet and marry each other. 3 whole weeks before her 28th birthday, Michael calls her to inform her that he's getting married in 4 days' time, which then throws Jules for a loop. Now, is this me trying to justify Jules' action in My Best Friend's Wedding? Hell no. Like I mentioned in the video I made for that particular film, everything was a mess. And no, I still firmly believe that there is nothing platonic about sucking a ring off of your best friend's finger. Michael knew exactly what he was doing, that piece of shit. But back to the point I am making, whilst the plot of Maid of Honor and My Best Friend's Wedding is similar in that these two characters, upon being informed that their best friend were getting married to someone else, decide to do everything they can to make sure that said wedding does not go through so that they can be the one to get the happy ending. And whilst Jules fails in doing so and Michael goes ahead to marry Kimmy as planned, which, poor Kimmy girl, you deserve better. Tom in Maid of Honor, on the other hand, succeeds in effectively stealing away Anna from her almost husband, Colin. But like I said earlier, the one thing that separates them isn't that Tom got the happy ending and Jules did not. It's that at least Jules had a reason for, while she waited until the crack ass say a prayer to baby Jesus moment to make her move, she had been waiting for the 28 years mark to hit as promised. How was she to know that her plans would go out of whack just 3 weeks too? Tom, on the other hand, had zero excuse. I mean, think about it. My dude, for over 10 years that he and Anna had been best friends ever since he slipped into her bed thinking she was her roommate and she had basically called him ugly, which he took as a compliment, whilst I was torn between asking the very important questions of in what way is Patrick Dempsey anything but dreamy? And also in what way does Patrick Dempsey look anything like a college student? Like, bruh, who is buying that his ass is what 21, 22 in that scene? Hell nah. Anyway, as I was saying, they have been friends for a decade now. And in all this while, whilst Anna was at his side, secretly pining for her best friend, he was slotting it up all over New York, which you know what? I'm not about to judge anyone for having sex. Fuck however, whoever you want. Live your life on your own terms. Just stay safe. What I do have a problem with, however, is that he took Tom's basketball buddy, specifically the one who was married, to be like, yo, you do realize that it is unfair to Anna that you basically see her as your support and committed partner in a sense, whilst you go on and have sex with other women. Like, how is that fair to her? She's not getting any younger. She's going to have to find someone else and move on if you don't get your act together. For it to click for Tom, it legit took Anna traveling to Scotland and not being available to him, as is their usual practice, for Tom to realize that she has been filling in the role of his girlfriend without the sex or commitment or even the label. He realizes that he actually wants her and decides that when she returns, he will wait for it. Ask that they start seeing each other, which you know might have worked in his favor, except that Anna comes back engaged to Owen Hunt. Sorry, I meant Colin. And now I'm going to admit it right out the bat that Owen's treatment of Christina and the other women he dated after her in Grey's Anatomy has soured me so much to his character that seeing Kevin in this movie, initially I was all team, fuck this dude, it's Owen Hunt. So you can imagine just how much I was anti Tom for me to be rooting for Colin, even though I also had a problem with the fact that Anna barely met this dude a week prior and was already engaged and wanted to marry him in a fortnight. Like, that was basically 3 weeks from just meeting this stranger to marrying him. And to make matters even worse, relocating. She's giving up the career she had worked her ass off to build at the Met to do fuck all in Scotland. It felt like the movie was trying to manipulate us into rooting for Tom by having Anna make all these harebrained decisions that had screaming red flags in her pursuit of her marriage to Colin. It was like she was so desperate to be chosen, to be loved, to get over this unrequited feeling she had harbored for Tom for the past decade, that the minute she had a man pop in who seemed like he was sweeping her off her feet, she immediately dived into planning this life with him without pumping the brakes or stopping to think. It felt manipulative that we had to choose between this man that Anna barely knew for like a month and Tom, who's been by her side for the last decade, but who never noticed her or considered her until his friends pointed it out and he realized that he was about to lose access to her permanently. I mean, what kind of choice is that? Although, to be fair, and in Colin's defense, does sound like an actual perfect guy. He adores her. There are no skeletons in his cupboard. He can throw an actual tree trunk. Like, I'm sorry, that scene had me shook it like, bruh, that man can carry things. But seriously, it's perfect in every other way except he does not, share chocolate. And there's the bit where he hunted the animals that they ate that night, which, part of the little ways in which the film showed that whilst Colin is the perfect man, he's not the perfect man for Anna, who the first time we're introduced to her and Tom as adults, when they're doing one of their bakery visits and shopping, spends the time arguing about the needless cruelty of skinning an animal. So yes, clearly she and Tom have not had the conversation about her stance on animal products and how they are sourced. I mean, we don't really get the confirmation, but I think she's vegan, right? And she's clearly not a fan of hunting, which clearly Colin is an expert at, something that Tom laughs at her about actually. But back to events of the movie and my point about how different he actually is from My Best Friend's Wedding. Michael spends that movie having this weird pseudo flirtatious thing with Jules going on that kept fucking with her head, and mine as the viewer as well, because I repeat, ain't nothing platonic about sucking a ring off of your best friend's finger. Anna in Maid of Honor at least doesn't do any of that. Tom spends a large portion of the movie trying his best to not wreck the wedding like Jules does, but instead puts in the utmost effort in presenting himself as the perfect maid of honor that Anna could have asked for. I mean, Patrick Dempsey brought on his juggling skills to the set of the film, and I had a blast with that scene, even though a voice at the back of my head kept screaming, "The dishes do not match." But yeah, he was trying to make her wedding preparations the best that it could possibly be for nefarious and selfish reasons, yes, but he did do good. And he didn't actually set out to ruin Colin, even though technically the only reason he didn't was because they really could not find any dirt on Colin, who was just that level of perfect. But most importantly for me, at least, Tom was not going out of his way to flirt with Anna like Michael was with Jules. Instead, he acted as a friend and kept trying to bring up the fact that she and Colin don't really know each other the way in which he knows her. They took different routes, which I appreciated. Also, I am not going to lie. Their kiss in the pub, that shit was hot as fuck. I was like, damn, that was a good kiss. Even her mother noticed that was a good kiss. And that was the moment when Anna realized that Tom might have feelings for her too, but then she chooses to continue with her wedding regardless until Tom comes running back and basically confesses to her while she's there at the altar, about to marry the filthily rich Scottish Duke. Which, I am sorry, girl, Scottish Duke, man who invented the coffee collar. Scottish Duke, man who invented the coffee collar. Like, really? You're going to go with coffee collar, dude? Seriously? But yes, Anna chooses love, and so she chooses Tom, and they do eventually get married. Now, like I stated at the start of the video, I personally feel like the entire premise of this movie was, yes, some executive somewhere saying that, you, what if we did an inverse version of My Best Friend's Wedding, but make it the guy who wants the girl instead? And the project was greenlit. However, the ending of it leads me to two possibilities as to why the story had Tom get the girl at the end. It's either one, because there is this is a patriarchal society, so of course the writing needs to ensure that the man gets what he wants at the end, and in this case what or who he wants is Anna, his best friend. The reason why Julia Roberts Jules didn't get what she wanted at the end was because the story was still centered on what Michael, as the male character, wanted. And what he wanted was his young and impressionable bride with his best friend, who he has some sort of sexual tension with on the side, available for whenever he chooses to cross that line. And he would sometime in the future of that world, because I repeat, there is nothing platonic about sucking a ring off of your best friend's finger. Nothing. But as I was saying, that is the first possibility. The fact that the movie needed to give Tom what he wanted as a man. The second possibility is that 6 years after the release of Sweet Home Alabama, where Tom, sorry, I meant Andrew, was left at the altar by Reese Witherspoon's Melanie, right in the presence of their family and friends, particularly Andrew's New York mayor mother, Melanie, who instead chooses to be with her childhood love, Jake, who is financially comfortable, yes, but not as wealthy as Andrew, who is from an old money New York family. She chooses Jake instead and leaves Andrew at the altar. And when Andrew's mother is rude, she punches her in the face before she gets to walk off into the sunset with Jake. And Andrew, who although is heartbroken, sends her off into said sunset to be with the man she loves. Contrast that with Maid of Honor, that was released 6 years later, where Andrew, sorry, Tom, now gets to have his version of a do-over. This time around, he is the one who is fairly financially comfortable, even though his wealth cannot compare with the Scottish Duke that owns a global distillery. And although he has to crash the wedding, unlike in Sweet Home Alabama, where Jake wasn't there and it was Melanie on her own who decides that she wants to be with him when her attorney shows up to reveal that she hadn't signed the divorce papers. This time around, Tom shows up. And just as with Sweet Home Alabama, the wedding has Colin and Anna's family and friends all gathered. And when Tom confesses his feelings, Anna chooses him. He might not have gotten the girl in Sweet Home Alabama, but by the gods does he get her in Maid of Honor. And this time around, it is Colin who has to be the bigger person, who, although heartbroken, sends Anna off into the sunset to be with the man she loves. Of course, Tom does get punched in the face, which to be fair, is very much deserved. I mean, he did show up to steal the bride after all, and that is where it differs, of course, from Sweet Home Alabama, where it is Andrew's mother that is punched instead for her disrespectful tone. Although, to be fair, I personally think that she should have been allowed to punch Melanie right back. Like, girl, you do not have a high horse to stand on right now. What the fuck? But of course, these are all just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours, whether or not you agree with me. Please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others might find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels. If they sound like something you might be interested in, I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you on Monday with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.